Many people have put off the idea of investing in commercial real estate because they have no idea where they're going to get funding from. And there are, in fact, many ways of getting funding for commercial real estate. Even if you don't have $1 million, you can buy a multi-million-dollar property. The first way is the most conventional way, and it's probably the one that comes to mind most readily, and that's to get simply what's called debt financing. This is where you go to a conventional bank and you put in your application, state your case as to why it's a great investment. They analyze it, they agree with you, and they lend you some money. Now, to be sure, they'll probably lend you a lower percentage of the purchase price than a residential property will allow you to get. You might only get 50 or 60% of the value of a commercial property from a bank, whereas on residential, they might readily be willing to give you 80 or 90%. But even so, I can show you ways where you can use that 50 or 60% of the valuation or appraisal to acquire the entire property. You see, with commercial property, the value of a commercial building is a multiple of its rental income. Technically, it's the rental income divided by the cap rate. So if you can figure out a way of doubling the rental income, you have doubled the value. So imagine there's a building there that you can buy for $1 million and you don't have the cash to buy it. However, if you can put a tenant in there which doubles the rental and the value goes to $2 million and you get a 50% loan from the bank, that covers your purchase price. The second source of financing for commercial real estate is one you should never overlook, and it's called seller financing. This is where you ask the seller or the vendor, would you consider leaving some money in? In fact, whenever you buy a property, and let me state it again, whenever you buy a property, you should always ask the seller, would you consider leaving some money in? Chances are they're going to say no. They're going to say, we're selling it because we need the money. But every now and then they'll say, actually, we would. We wouldn't get much in the bank anyway if we put the proceeds in the bank. So they will give you the money you need to buy the property, and it ends up in your name. This is great. Number 3 is what's called equity funding. For the money that you don't have in cash and that you can't borrow from the bank, but you still don't have enough to acquire the property, you might offer someone an equity stake in the property. In other words, they put in the shortfall, but they now own a percentage, maybe 20 or 30% of the property. This is a win-win for everyone because without equity funding, you may not be able to buy it. And with equity funding, yes, you don't own it outright anymore, but wouldn't you rather own 80% of something that still has tremendous upside potential and you didn't have to come up with all the money than own nothing of it because you can't afford it? The fourth source of funding is to use what we call a JV partner or a joint venture partner. Now, again, you may not have all the money you need to do it. You may not be able to go to a bank, or you may not have the resources to get an equity funding bank to put the money in. And what you can do then is go to a number of people you know, it might be friends or acquaintances, and say, listen, I want to do this development or this investment, but I don't have all the capital. Are you willing to participate? And very often they may say, no, we don't have the money, or it's the wrong time, or we're not interested, don't bug me. But occasionally someone will say yes, and that's exactly what I did with the water ski lakes that I referred to before. Because these water ski lakes, you may recall, I dug a hole, 24 acres of hole in the ground, but I didn't have the money to do it. So we went to a number of potential partners and explained what we were doing. And one of them said, wow, I really like this idea. I'm willing to put up some money for this. And him putting up the money enabled all of us to go ahead with the deal and make a roaring success of it and turn a bit of stark desert into an oasis. It was great. And a fifth source of finance is what's known as a hard money loan. It's called hard money because it's usually for a short-term period. They give you the money in cash. The interest rate tends to be quite high. But what it enables you to do is to take down a building. And in my case, what I often do is I will either get tenants into vacant space or bring in a better tenant that pays more rent, and then the value will go up. And with this new higher valuation, after a year or so, I can go to a conventional bank and get a new loan. I did this with a building that was empty and no one knew what to do with it, but I knew that it would make a good coffee shop, but I didn't have the money in the first place to buy the building. So I went to a hard money lender. I told him, this is what I intend to do. He lent me the money. I put the coffee shop in, got it up and running, and then got an appraiser in. And the value went up so much that I could then go to a conventional bank to get the money as a conventional mortgage from the bank. I promised you 5 methods of getting financing for commercial real estate, and I gave you 5. But I want to give you a bonus because this one's really important too. It's usually deployed in larger scale commercial properties, and it's called mezzanine financing. And essentially, someone puts up money that is like debt financing, but it can convert to equity financing. In other words, they have the choice of converting it to an ownership stake. And this is a very important component. You'll find that most large-scale commercial deals, $40, $50 million or more, they tend to have mezzanine financing in place. It's a great benefit to both the developer of a property or the investor of a property and the people who are funding it, because they now all have a vested interest in making sure that the entire deal goes very well. I've given you 5, in fact 6 methods of getting funding on a commercial deal. And yet from the people I speak with, most of them don't look for a deal because they think they can't get the financing. And here's the secret. You have to find the deal first, because once you have the deal, the funding will find you. If you put it out there that you've got access to this phenomenally good deal, there will be people who come out of the woodwork willing to fund it because that's their specialty. And once you do get that deal, you can increase its value in myriad ways. And that's why we're re-releasing this book, 101 Ways to Massively Increase the Value of Your Real Estate Without Spending Much Money. Make sure you secure your free copy by clicking on the link below. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. Remember to subscribe. And I've been in this game of real estate for about 40 years. And the most frequent comment I get from people who really want to get into commercial real estate but don't is they don't do so because they think it's too difficult to get the funding. So I hope at the very least you've learned that what you should do is find the deal first, because when you find the deal, the funding usually follows. That is as sure as day follows night. If the deal is good enough, there are people who are willing to fund it for you. And if you're not sure whether commercial's for you, you might be thinking residential is really hot right now. Should I not get into residential? I've just completed a video which explores just that, the relative merits of residential versus commercial and which is best for you. Check it out. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.